kind words, General. And the Sheriff's Office and the amount of work they put into this case is truly incredible. I want to cover some topics because I anticipate some questions on this case. As you heard, it is a extremely disturbing set of circumstances. I would ask that since we have a lot to cover after the four of us have talked, the General, the Sheriff, and Rita Peters from Assistant Statewide Prosecutor, after she gets a chance to speak, then we're going to open up for some questions. Prosecutors in Florida have an obligation to be very confined about what they say before a trial. So our pretrial comments have to be limited to what is in the public record and what is commonly known by the people in the community. And there's a reason for that. The reason is everybody wants a fair trial, but the state has a right to a fair trial as well. So our constitutional responsibility has to be balanced against our obligations to make sure that we're transparent with the community about what we do and that the media has accurate information about a particular case. So we balance those two obligations, and that's why we're here today, because we do believe it's important to let everybody know where we are and what this community is going through. Without question, Florida leads the nation in providing for victims' rights. Without question. It used to be that crime victims and their families felt like they were sidelined because they didn't feel like they had a say in the criminal justice process. Florida does not do that anymore. Florida sits at the top in the nation as far as giving crime victims rights and their family members rights. And that's something that is really important to us as an office, and we take that responsibility seriously. There is no more important time in a prosecutor's career than when they are advocating for children. And that's because children can't fight for themselves. I tell our prosecutors all the time, your job is to fight for those who can't fight for themselves. And this is the kind of case where, you know, we put it all on the line. And there's really no place where our advocacy is more important. So a little over 2 weeks ago, a Good Samaritan came to the Sheriff's Office with information about Nathan Holmberg. And the Sheriff's Office got on this case immediately. Extremely quickly, they gathered evidence. And as you heard before from a previous press conference, the critical piece of evidence was a cell phone. And in that cell phone contained images of, you know, just unspeakable crimes against young children, production of child pornography, and it's hard to describe, and that's why we're not going to do that. But that critical piece of evidence became the focal point of this case. And from there, it has expanded into other jurisdictions and other types of crimes, all sexual in nature, that the Sheriff's Office has been uncovering. Due to the seriousness of the charges, and frankly, because in Hernando County, we have zero tolerance for child predators, as soon as he was arrested, he was put in custody on no bond, and he remains on no bond. He's going to be on no bond until this case is resolved. On Monday, the 10th, the grand jury convened here in Brooksville. They heard evidence, and they issued a true bill of indictment charging Nathan Holmberg with multiple counts. And I'm going to go through some of the counts right now so you have an idea of what they are, but we're also going to share a redacted indictment with you as well. So counts 1 through 7 of the indictment allege the defendant committed sexual battery on a child under 12. Each of those charges carries a mandatory life sentence in prison and is eligible for the death penalty. So counts 1 through 7 are death penalty eligible. Counts 8 through 11 allege lewd and lascivious molestation of a child under 12. Each of these counts constitutes a life felony in Florida. Counts 12 through 14 allege the defendant committed lewd and lascivious conduct upon a child, a second-degree felony punishable by up to 15 years in prison. And in addition to the indictment returned on Monday, Nathan Holmberg was arrested and charged by information with the following: 83 counts of possession of child pornography, 1 count of lewd and lascivious molestation on a separate victim, 4 counts of production of child sexual abuse material, which is child pornography, involving 3 additional victims. All told, we have 5 separate child victims here in Hernando County that we've identified so far. I should stress the indictment issued by the grand jury was for crimes that occurred here in Hernando County only. These crimes occurred between December 27th, 2024 and October 20th, 2025, the date that he was arrested by the sheriff's office. And those are the dates that he started when he first moved here until he was arrested. To be clear, the detectives uncovered evidence that additional crimes have occurred outside of the 5th Judicial Circuit, and I believe the Office of Statewide Prosecutor, Rita Peters, might be discussing some of the general broad aspects of that as well. For purposes of background, as you heard the general mention, that we are seeking the death penalty. In Florida, capital cases where the death penalty is an option, and in Florida, capital sexual battery is one of those statutes. We have to go to a grand jury. We can't just file an information and charge somebody. Those things have to go before the grand jury as a body. And once they issue a true bill, then it's our obligation to take the case and present it to the court. The day that they issued their true bill of indictment on all these counts, I filed a death notice in this case. Now, Florida requires that there be at least 2 statutory aggravators in every case that you're going to seek the death penalty on. In this particular case, we've alleged 4 aggravators, and you'll have a copy of that death notice along with a redacted copy of the indictment so you can see it for yourself. You know, filing a death notice is not something we take lightly. We look at the specific facts of every single case. We look at the impact on the victims. We look at the impact on the community, and we have to recognize that sometimes in these cases, not only are the children the victims, but the state is a victim. The community is a victim as a whole. In those aggravators, and when you have that before you, you'll be able to kind of see a little bit more, not necessarily detail about the case, but why this case is different than every other case. There are a couple people I want to thank before I turn it over. Angelina Rodeo was one of our prosecutors who presented to the grand jury, and my chief assistant, Walter Forgey, also presented, and assistant statewide prosecutor Rita Peters also attended the grand jury. And the preparation that went into this case from the detectives, and I want to name some of them in particular because we've worked with them now almost, nearly 24 hours a day since this happened. So here we've got Hernando County Detectives Troy Heiler, Christopher Loretto, Tom Cameron, and Sean Galarza. Tireless pursuit of justice in this case on behalf of these victims. I also want to mention the forensic detectives, the ones that have to go through these devices and pour through these phones and look at these images. Detectives Vassalero and Weston did an incredible job in this particular case. And we often fail to recognize the people in the background, the crime scene technicians, the forensic people. They put the most evidence, the most compelling evidence that we have as prosecutors. They're very often the ones who give that to us and get it before a jury and a grand jury for that matter. So they do need to be recognized because of the work that they do. One final thought before I turn it over. When making capital sexual battery death penalty eligible, when Florida did that, the legislature said the following: such crimes destroy the innocence of a young child and violate all standards of decency held by civilized society. Now, I couldn't agree with that more. This is why we're here. This is why we fight. And these types of crimes are obviously the most serious, but that's why we are here doing what we are doing. We are here to protect the most vulnerable in our community. Images haunt anybody who's had to lay eyes on them. They really do.